Well, sometimes it's also that I might like find some like video and I want to like show guests or something like that. It's kind of annoying for like everyone crowded my computer or like look at my phone. Everyone's like, what is that? You know? So I had that situation. I was just like, God, it would be so cool if I could just put it, just plug it to my TV like I do here. And I tried to do it, and it was just like, I know I'm missing something. It can't be that simple. So, given my math degree, I'm thinking this for you.
Okay.
So I thought we'd kind of do it like, I thought that worked well the other week where we kind of did it almost like a study group and you kind of shared what you thought. I mean, and again, this is for you. So if some other way is gonna work better for you, you let me know. I did pull a couple of things together, just like the rules and stuff like that, if we need to look at that. Now, are you still, where are you? I'm always like that. I feel like I'm getting the update, like where are you on hearsay? Because there was nothing in People magazine about it, so I'm asking you about
We finished hearsay with all the exceptions, but now we're working on confrontations clause, so we just had the first class on that.
Okay.
And that kind of turned everything upside down. And
Well, we
yeah,
didn't
exactly.
finish all the exceptions, isn't there like 23 exceptions or something?
That's true. I don't think we went over all of them in class, but I think you went over like the main ones.
Yeah,
I have a feeling that he's only concerned about those. I don't know.
because we went all the way up to like the business part of it,
The
the
business
records.
records and stuff, yeah.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then we
Dying,
got-
dying declaration, stuff like that,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
I think there's, how many exceptions are there?
24th, and then there's
Yeah, we had to go
obviously
over
the
around like
catch-all.
24.
yeah, I was like, I don't think I have more.
We'll have
But
to-
the ones in the beginning though had like 3 and then
Yeah, maybe it's a
5.
total of all.
So
of
maybe it's
those.
a total of all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. I couldn't see them skipping over it.
You know, this is.
And he just categorized them,
Are we?
so to make it, I think, easier for us to remember what to ask them. Because-
Yeah, so we just started confrontation class.
Well, why is this not? Is that not casting? After that whole conversation, I've done this like a dozen, because I'm in the wrong room. I'm so used to being over there.
So
You're projecting over there.
I'm over there, yeah. I'm sure they-
Who's
I'm
over
sure
I'm sure they're.
I'm sure they're happy. All right.
Isn't all the attorneys, weren't they supposed to be fingerprinted by April?
If you're taking the bar?
No, if you're a practicing attorney, you have to be.
yeah, to
fingerprinted
keep your
by
license.
Oh, the new updates
Yeah, I was
to
wondering
California.
what's happening. 'cause
Yeah,
We have a few work comp, because I'm in workers' comp, we have a few work comp attorneys that have been disbarred.
Because of that?
I don't know,
Oh.
I don't know what.
They have until April, I believe.
I just know that I couldn't find them on I usually have them in my emails, and I found out through the grapevine that
Oh.
well, there has to be something more
Oh my gosh.
there. But because
That's insane.
if for something like a technical thing like that, you just didn't, pay a fee or something like
they,
that, you're not gonna be disbarred until they might, censure you or suspend you and then give you time to do it. But
but
disbarment, you gotta do some like heavy
I
stuff.
know, and
So
I
there's something
thought-
else going on there that
Yeah.
maybe they didn't get fingerprinted because they did commit a crime and never reported it to the bar.
I was wondering, but I thought they still had till April to get fingerprinted. I'm just being nosy, I didn't know what was going on.
No, that's not nosy as a member of the public. I mean, you could go on and see anyone if they're licensed or what
Yeah,
their
well,
status is.
I
or-
had heard, because I was trying to find some of my attorneys that, from my work comp, and I was like, where are they? And I found out they're
It's always good to do a check before you also hire someone to see. I always thought it's good also if you're dating another lawyer, to look to see, you can also look at if
That's not
they've
right.
been in prison or
So
whatever,
I
yeah.
have a short story, so because Daniel deals with workers' comp with me sometimes, we found out through the grapevine that they did not do background checks on adjusters, and later.
On adjusters.
On adjusters, and later on your new hire is supposed to do that. Later on, we found out that he had been working for us for 20 years, and he was a serial killer. And they had, he was burying the bodies behind his house, and he was working for the state. And nobody caught it until something happened, and then they actually handcuffed him while he was in the office.
In your office?
Not in my office, he was in the Glendale office.
Wow.
And they
When was it?
That's pretty terrible.
This happened about 5 years ago, but he started working for us in the 80s, late
Wow.
80s. You know,
What's his name?
I can't remember.
Make a
Somebody
mental,
tried to date him.
You know
make
what?
a mental note of that.
If you put state fund serial killer,
It'll come up.
Oh yeah, former state fund employee tied to SoCal serial
there
killing.
you go, right
How
there.
many?
Yeah.
There was quite a
Insurance
bit.
Joe.
There was like, I wanna say like a good number of them, like 18,
Yeah,
19, 20 of them.
Oh, I did.
Wow, he's old too.
Oh, I did the wrong. I have to fix that.
And he was, everybody's like, oh, you know, and he was so quiet and such a nice guy. I was like,
Oh, so you knew him?
I didn't know him.
Oh.
I talked to him before,
Oh, wow.
but I didn't know him.
Okay.
It was Thomas.
Thomas, that was his
Yeah.
name. So yeah, that's.
John Floyd Thomas Jr. It's a very normal name. So there's
Try one more time here.
No, then I'm dirtying out all the dirty laundry from my work.
Sounds like interesting work. Sounds like interesting people.
It's never dull, I can
That's
tell you
good.
that. It's never dull at work.
So why don't you start looking at the ones that you wanted to go over. And I know that we usually do property first because you guys love property so much. And it's a personal favorite of yours.
Are you doing something with this up here?
No, I'm trying to, I'm casting something onto there.
Good, okay, I didn't know if you were casting over there, over here. So anyway, I just didn't want to interrupt you, except to say I already talked to you today, everything's fine,
Okay,
have fun together.
okay,
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
See ya.
thank you. There we go. Okay. Just what I did, clicked it, I was like. Alright, so now that we know about the serial killer, this is good for my, for ethics. So if I'm doing it next year, we're gonna be talking about this again, but, you know, unfortunately, there's a good number of cases like this. Where attorneys end up doing some really, usually it's financial improprieties that get lawyers in trouble, and not usually,
I was just wondering if they were just, I thought, if there was they were doing something for people that weren't fingerprinted yet. And I thought, I think they still have to fingerprint, so I didn't know.
So I think I kind of lost the loop, so weren't all attorney, I guess they wanna re-fingerprint everyone? That's, no one was
No.
fingerprinted initially?
No, they brought in somebody at my work, so all the lawyers could get fingerprinted.
No, but I'm saying the bar.
Oh,
the-
I don't know.
The state
I
bar,
thought it
yeah,
was
they-
all lawyers, right?
Yeah, everybody.
What happened, didn't one of the speakers at the MCLE say that,
I remember that.
remember they said that somehow the fingerprints got lost?
Oh, I don't remember that.
It was something, because when I got fingerprinted, and this was, and every state does that, so I had to get fingerprinted in 2 states. This is before the cool digital fingerprinting, so I had the purple on my hands for a week. Yeah, I'm not sure
I
what,
think it has to do with the new rules of ethics, and they think the state bar thinks that there may be lawyers out there who aren't reporting when they get in trouble to the state bar. You know, like when they get,
right, well, that's what I was saying, that could be in this situation.
I think it
I,
is.
I thought it was also just that they wanted to digitize it, because it's clearer than
Oh, maybe, yeah.
like I said, we just did it with the ink,
That's
and
interesting.
now it's much more high tech. I mean,
Yeah.
is that, have you ever done it?
Oh.
Yeah.
Where you
No.
roll your finger on this kind of screen,
Oh, I didn't see what happened.
yeah, so there's no more ink, and they kind of manipulate your hands in certain ways, and then if it doesn't work well, you have to do it again. I had to do it just also because of all the colleges I've worked at, they, require it, so
Yeah.
serial killer. Children or whatever. So it might be that part of that also. So is that okay that, I mean, I know you don't love property, but I just thought you wanna kind of get that over with first, so to make sure we cover enough of those.
That's a lot on fact patterns.
Yeah, there were some really long fact patterns.
Gosh,
They were brutal.
fall asleep.
The weird thing is that what we're studying right now, Professor Sherman, is that not one question related to what we're studying right now.
Really?
Yeah.
Alright, well then maybe we won't spend a lot of time on it,
Well,
because it's like, you're not gonna process it as well if you don't have the foundation of it. You know what I'm saying?
so
So,
we've had a lot of the, like.
Yeah, we've had most of this stuff that was on here.
First semester.
Yeah, first semester mostly.
you mean property or the other stuff?
Yeah, for property, it was a lot of conveyances,
Okay.
and a lot of, fee estate stuff.
Can we do 5? I know it's probably something simple, but for some reason I didn't get.
On the first set,
Property.
On the first set of property,
Okay. There we go. 5?
yeah.
The vineyard.
Page 49.
Oh, good, I'm glad you said that, 'cause I think I was in, what page are you on?
49.
49.
Okay, I have something completely different going on then.
49.
My 49 is civil
It's
procedure.
set 3.
Oh, really?
Oh, no, there's several ones, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Page 49 and set 3.
it was civil procedure, then real property, so real property should be somewhere in the middle.
Right, I have that, but I have another, I think she gave me another section. Let's see. Where I'm going. Just the restaurant? That one?
No.
A fee simple owner of a restaurant.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's
okay,
the one.
yeah, so I was on the wrong,
Yeah, that's there.
oh, okay, oh, okay.
These are the notes,
I was looking at the, okay, alright. So, who thought what? Well, pulling something up here.
What did you choose?
Don't ask me why, but I put A, but I think I'm not understanding rules against perpetuities.
Okay, good. It's like a cartoon to show everyone.
Okay.
Because I keep thinking like that's what you're struggling with. Are you or you?
I think fee estates in general are difficult,
Yeah.
all of them.
So I wanted to show you part of this cartoon. I also going to show you this little kind of diagram to think of. And this is what I know I keep talking about things like this. I know it was probably like what, but this is where that kind of memorization, like, you know, when you see this, you know that, you know, the rule against perpetuities is irrelevant because of, you know, these types of things, like a interest in a contingent remainder and that type of thing. So kind of like memorizing those things in your head. So what went through your head in terms of, this is during my friend's lifetime. Oh, I think I remember reading this and thinking, even though it was so short, I felt like it was maybe a little tricky.
That's what I felt like I'm missing something because it's short, it seems simple, but I got it wrong. And I was like, what?
And so what did you, let's get what everyone chose and go through that.
I picked A.
Okay. Because you thought it was invalid under the rules of perpetuity?
Yeah.
Right? Because,
You picked A as well.
You got A as well?
I think we applied the rule incorrectly, yeah. applied the
See,
rule.
that's what I'm thinking, I think I'm not understanding.
right, and so here, kind of with, well, and this is what I want to go through with you and show, I'd like to show you this cartoon and then we can talk about it, but what did you guys pick?
I put D.
You did, okay.
And
So
I
you
did
you
not do it, I did not do the question, because, no, I chose to.
Yeah, I'm not good with rule against perpetuities, but
Yeah,
I try
I
to look
don't-
at it like from a common sense kind of standpoint.
Okay,
He gives it to his friend. I assumed, I guess maybe I shouldn't assume or infer that the owner of the restaurant and the friend are around the same age. Because of that, right? Because they're friends.
okay, but,
And that has nothing to do with the question, but I thought like, okay, well, if the friend dies, then it goes, if you look at this estate, right, it goes to the children after. And their interest would vest within 21 years after the friend expires.
okay, but remember too, that it doesn't, and I don't know if you're saying this, so, but it doesn't matter how old someone is, like, you talk about like the octogenarian, I'm guessing no. Like, it doesn't matter that maybe they can't have children anymore, so don't look at it like that.
I think that.
Because the rule is basically, it's kind of like, think of it as anyone could have children at any time, because remember, they could adopt or something like that.
Right.
So don't look at it that they like physically can't have children.
No, I wasn't.
I know, I'm
was
just-
looking at
right.
Something completely different.
But
I'm
it
just-
worked.
It worked, yeah, I got the right answer.
See, and the 21 years threw me off. I knew we talked about something like that in class, but just the room.
Okay, let me show this
I
real
thought
quick.
because the owner of the restaurant had kids that they were. If the owner of the restaurant and the friend were roughly the same age, that the kids, when the friend died, the friend would die around the same time as the owner, and then because of that, that their interest would be able to vest within 21 years. It's not like it was conveyed 2 or 3 times down to grandchildren or something like that, and by the time their interest vested, it would be like 90 years
Right,
later, you know what I'm saying?
That's a good way of looking at it. So here we know it's given to the son's kids, the son, right?
Right.
And so they're gonna be 21 right, those 21 years, it's gonna be sometime during the friend's lifetime. So it won't be more than that. So I'm getting back to Daniel's point. Think of it as, are we going so far ahead? So what's the reason for this whole rule? Like, why do we even have it? To drive you insane? Yes. That's the first reason. Then the second reason is, what's the reason for it? Maybe that'll help you. You should know the reason for it, because that's gonna make it more practical, because you just hear perpetuities and it's a long word with a lot of R's in it.
Because you can't have your property interests go on forever, right? Like they can't vest for,
Right, but we don't want it hanging out there with like, it's not anywhere now. So in other words, I have the property and then I want to give it to like my super great grandchildren. But in the meantime, it's just floating around and nobody has it. So we don't want that, right? So think of stuff like that. So we want it going right to someone. We don't want it going all the way down the line to someone, you know, in the year 2099 or something like that. I want it, well, actually, that's not even that far away. But, you know, 2299 or something like that. We don't want it floating out there.
Okay.
We want it to get to someone now. So we'll maybe look at some ones where the rule does apply and you'll see that it's like, it's just too far away. So that's a good way, Daniel, you seem to be on that track of
Okay.
thinking about it.
yeah, I can't explain it though.
But-
I mean, it's so hard.
But that was it.
Okay.
So, so let's just look, you wanna look at this short cartoon? I have it in the middle, I could send you the whole thing and then it's kind of longer, but I thought where it picks up, and the voice is kind of a little wonky. But this one point I think is kind of good, and there are a couple of these cartoons. So if nothing else, you've seen a good cartoon today. Make this bigger. Okay. All right, don't get scared.
Yes, Mommy, is it a fee interest too?
Honey, Grandpa decided that fees were too complicated for his kids. So when I came along, I got a life estate in Black Acre.
Mommy, what happens after the life estate? Do I get Black Acre?
That depends on how your grandpa set things up with the life estate. Maybe he wants it back for himself and his side of the family. Then Grandpa Grantor has a reversion.
But what if he wants someone else to get it? Like maybe me.
That would be nice, dear. Then you would be a remainder man.
Does that mean I would get Black Acre?
If Grandpa said that you can have Black Acre after my life estate without any condition precedent, then you have a vested remainder.
What's a vested remainder, Mommy?
A vested remainder is created in an ascertained person and not subject to any condition precedent. You are an ascertained person, so your remainder is vested as long as Grandpa didn't impose any condition precedent.
Yay, I get Black Acre when you die.
Not so fast, dear. Your vested remainder might be subject to divestment. For example, there could be a condition subsequent or a class gift subject to open.
So I get a vested remainder and it can get taken away?
Yes, dear. But that's better than a contingent remainder.
Tell me again, Mommy, what's a contingent remainder?
A contingent remainder is either created in an unascertained person or subject to condition precedent.
But I'm an ascertained person, so I can't have a contingent remainder.
Well, unless there's a condition precedent. If Grandpa created a remainder for you and no condition precedent, it's vested, and that's a good thing.
Yes, Rachel, a vested remainder.
And who are you?
I'm the angel of alienability. Come outside with me.
Mommy, I'm going out to play with the angel of alienability. So why is it good that I have a vested remainder?
Because contingent remainders are subject to the rule against perpetuities.
Never heard of any rule against perpetuities. And why do you care so much about the rule against perpetuities? Anyway?
Because I'm the angel of alienability. I'm there to preserve free alienability throughout the land and protect future interests from dead hand control.
I'm the spirit of dead hand control.
That's why we have the rule against perpetuities.
So tell me, Angel, what is the rule against perpetuities?
No interest is good unless it must vest, if at all, no later than 21 years after some life and being at the creation of the interest.
So the rule against perpetuities does not affect vested remainders.
That's right.
These are the things.
And it doesn't affect a reversion or a remainder that goes back to the grantor.
But it can affect contingent remainders.
Yes, it mainly affects contingent remainders, class gifts, and executory interests.
Are there special problems with the rule?
I'm afraid so. A class gift may be void if a member would vest after the perpetuities period, and you have to watch out for the fertile octogenarian and the unborn widow.
Hello, I'm the unborn widow.
And hello, I'm a fertile octogenarian.
These few ladies will show how you can get in trouble under the rule against perpetuities.
If I'm not born when the future interest is granted, this could violate the rule against perpetuities.
That's right. If you're unborn, you're not a life and being at the time of the grant. A grant to you might not vest or fail within 21 years after the lives and being at the time of the grant, and that's a no-no.
And even though I'm 80 years old, I could still have children after the grant.
That's right. But your unborn child is not a life and being at the time of the grant. So a grant to your unborn children might not vest or fail within 21 years after the lives and being at the time of the grant, and that's a no-no. So remember the unborn widow and the fertile octogenarian when you study the rule against perpetuities.
Because we all want to live happily ever after.
Because we all want to live happily ever after.
Yes, and if you can't live happily ever after, you should create future interests that vest or fail within 21 years after a life and being, so that your grantees live happily ever after themselves. So as long as you follow the rule against perpetuities, all of Grandpa's grantees can live happily ever after too.
Thanks, Alienability Angel.
Yes, thanks Alienability Angel.
Up in the way, to preserve free alienability of land and the Anglo-American way of life.
I don't understand what the widow has to do with it. Like, I don't understand, like, why wouldn't her rights vest within 21 years if the life and being is her deceased spouse, I guess, right? Is that what, I don't understand at all.
So I'm not sure which one you were talking about.
At the very
So,
end
At the
there
very
was
end, right.
The widow and the.
Octogen-
Yeah,
right,
I don't even know how to say it. The widow.
right,
I understand the, what is it? What's the other one?
the octogenarian.
Octogenarian.
Hi, could be. Is everything all right?
So I get a basic understanding of that, but the widow I don't understand. So why would the rule against perpetuities affect the widow? Because wouldn't their rights vest if there was a life estate or whatever within 21 years? Because the life and being is the person that died, right?
Right, but I think that they were saying that if that person didn't have kids, so in other words, that she would give that grant to somebody else, so it vested in her, right?
Right.
But we don't seem to know where it's gonna go after that. It could take way longer than 21 years. We don't know when that next being is ever gonna get that.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
So again, it's like we don't want it hanging out that we never know who it gets to, and in this getting back to this Friday Willish go on his death to his friend, but if during my friend's lifetime my son has children and those children are alive when my friend dies, kids are alive and his friend dies. So don't kind of look at it as well, what if the son doesn't have kids? Like, don't start imagining. I think that's how we sometimes get in trouble. Like, well, what if that happens? But they're saying, my son has children and those children are alive when my friend dies. Then to says living children, that's definite. There's no gap in between. And that's what we're afraid about. So their interest will vest if at all, in a lifetime, that's the probability that it's going to be within 21 years. Let's do another one so we can keep kind of talking about it, because I see you're still maybe a little tripped up, but that's okay.
Would you be able to send us that chart that you talked about?
Yeah. Let me send you this. Let me send you this. I have it on here too, but let me send you. I'll send you guys this chart. And I think so. I don't know. See, these are kind of like, so this middle one here, it's saying, I don't know. your vision is. Let's make it a little. Is there any time restriction on when the future interest can vest? So again, that kind of, is there some type of restriction that it won't get to the next group, if you will, like right away? Can it be hanging out there for a while? So it's just like a bowling alley or something. Here, does the interest vest immediately upon the death of or upon an event in the life of a person who is alive at the time of the conveyance? Again, it's going right to somebody, it's not kind of hanging out there. Does it create a future interest? Rule against perpetuities is irrelevant because it's a future it's a real interest. It's not something, but let's do another one. I think that would help, and then we'll go back to the chart. So do you have another one?
I didn't see another one with perpetuity, did you?
I thought there was,
13 was
or 7, but go ahead, 13?
7? You want to do 7? We can do 7.
No, we'll do 13.
Oh, yeah.
Boyfriend, girlfriend, the boyfriend.
I just saw in the very last sentence of the question, it says the jurisdiction retains the common law rule against perpetuities. So, but I just remember this one was super confusing to me. There was so much going on.
I feel like we've done something like this. Okay, this is awfully familiar. Maybe I just read it in something else before. Yeah, we did almost the same one as this, and it was the grandson. So that's why I keep telling you, if you keep doing them again and again and again and again, the questions are similar. I remember this one, it was the same, it was with like the grandson. So anyway, but anyway, that's why I'm like, and it was the same type of thing that I think they were in a car crash instead.
Oh.
So anyway.
Yeah, that guy subsequent too, but I couldn't even keep like the story straight, you know?
Right, no,
And there's just so many parties involved.
it was definitely confusing. Okay, let me just see what you can do. Okay, so let me just kind of like do it as what did some of the rest of you think, or when you kind of waddled through this, so to speak?
I didn't really get the language of it either. Like, Silver mine shall pass to my husband for life, and to my children. This is the part that I didn't get. With the issue of any predeceased child taking that child's share, I thought predeceased child means a child that dies before another child. Right?
Are you talking about that quote there at the top, the silver mine?
Yeah.
Will pass to my children for life, and to my children, with the issue of any, is that what you were just read?
Yeah, with the issue of any predeceased child taking that child's share. What does that mean? Because I thought that a predeceased child would be a child that dies before one of the other children, right?
Right, that is
Right.
I
So
see
how could that predeceased child take that child's share if they're the one that died first?
because it's saying the issue of the predeceased child. So even though it's a child, in other words, you're your parents' children, but you're adults. So you're still referred to as children, but you're adults. You see? So the issue, the children of any, so you're,
No, I get that, I'm
Okay,
saying
okay.
that it's saying with the issue of any predeceased child, so any of the dead children will take the other child's share, which doesn't make sense to me because they're dead. I think I'm reading it backwards.
right, so, okay.
So is it saying that the surviving children will take the share of the deceased children?
Right, so it
It
says,
doesn't make sense to me.
right, so it says, so it says to my children, okay, so look at it, so Daniel's children, with the issue, the children of any predeceased child, so one of those kids taking that child's, so in other words, the issue, so your children taking the other children's place, basically. So like her grandchildren taking the place of their aunt or uncle who died.
But doesn't,
You see what I'm saying?
does predeceased mean that they're not dead yet? I think that's what it means where they died. Predeceased.
I thought that it was that, I'm not sure, I
Yeah.
guess I'm asking that, cause I thought predeceased means that you died before somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah, so you died.
Did you Google it? What does it say?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just kind of took it for granted, but yeah, you die, you predeceased someone.
Yeah, you
So
died
like they
before.
often say in obituaries, the child predeceased the parent, so you died before them.
If Trish came over here right now and cut off my head with a knife, I would predecease
Yeah.
Professor
See what I'm
Sherman.
saying?
Oh,
No, you're right, it says die before another person.
Right, so and that's what usually in obituaries, they'll say the child predeceased her parents, and that's kind of unusual, right? You don't usually die before.
So
your
that's why I don't
parents.
understand this little part of the sentence, with the issue of any predeceased child taking that child's share, how could you take that to the grave? You know, they would take the other child's share, but they're the ones that are dead. I'm sorry if I'm being confusing, I just don't. I
No,
don't
no, no,
understand.
you're not. So wait, so let's go through it a little more, and then we'll, because I think that might help you. But I'm smiling because it is very confusing. Okay, so this is helpful. So now that I know that Daniel struggled with that, what are the other things that you struggled with on this?
I think for me was there's too many parties, and even when I was trying to write it, I got totally confused.
Okay.
So there was
Same.
just,
I tried to write it and slash things out, you know,
Okay.
because of the conditions in the conveyance, you know, you slash things out, and I still got confused because I think there are just too many parties here. There's landowner, children, grandchildren, boyfriend.
I know, then they threw in a boyfriend, I'm like, oh my God.
Right. I thought that was a little bit of a snag. Now wait, I'm just looking in the facts. Where's the boyfriend listed in the facts again? Finding it.
Oh, he's in the second paragraph.
Oh, right. That she left it to her boyfriend. Okay. Okay. All right. So let's run through it now in terms of the people that you can kind of get rid of. So again, I think you know that the easiest way to do it is to really look at the choices, right? Rather than trying to figure out, because you might be thinking like, Dad did, and it's like, oh, well, that's not even a choice, right? So you are doing that, right? You were looking at the choices first.
Before we read the question or after?
A lot of I usually read it, just glance at it beforehand, right?
I do for questions just to see what land I'm in and what area of law I'm in, like if it's.
Well, that's good
Okay,
too,
we
but
know the future
but just kind of to check, like,
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
well, I'm looking for the granddaughter, or I'm looking for the grandson. But anyone else, you can kind of like, don't even start thinking about them, I guess is what I'm saying, you know what I mean, like when you're reading it. So in terms of the grandson's so let's do kind of process of elimination. So the grandson's widow. Grandson dwindled for 2 weeks before dying. They left the following survivors: the husband, the granddaughter, the grandson's widow, and the sole heir.
Okay, so when the husband renounced his gift, the life estate would be stricken out. So that would strike out the possibility of a reverter too.
Right,
So then it would go to the landowner's children, thus to their children and to their.
right, the granddaughter and the grandson, right, but then then he died. Right, so that went to the widow. Keep going.
Well, the daughter has an interest and she conveys that to her boyfriend.
Right, and right, there's no,
And she had it validly, she had a valid interest in it.
right,
So she can convey her interest to the boyfriend, so the boyfriend would get a piece of it too. So it'd be,
Oh, I see, okay.
you have to figure out all the other stuff first, you kind of have to do it in steps, but.
right. And, I'm not telling you not to do these questions, but this is definitely one of those, like, maybe you wanna do it at the end.
Yeah, you have to write.
Because if it's gonna trip you up, I'm just giving you a little strategy here. If it's gonna trip you up so much and take up so much of your time, you have to look at it that way.
Yeah, almost, you have to do a chart, like husband.
Well, you do, and that's why I keep saying,
Yeah.
write it out and circle it and start drawing lines, but if, and I'm not saying to start timing yourself, but if you're feeling so bogged down by it, you have to kind of make that call that you may need to move on. And that's not saying that I don't want you to understand it, but sometimes you have to, and then, like I said, you need then to, if you have 5 left at the end that you can't get to, what are you gonna do?
Pick a letter.
Pick a letter and just keep going down the line. Look, here on 12 and 13, if you pick B, we got both right. So anyway, again, I'm not suggesting that's your strategy to take the bar, but you may have some times when there's just, and I'm not saying I don't remember that happening to me, but, and you do know this, I don't think I'm telling you anything you don't know already, but these questions are like crazier harder than the bar. Right? You know that? Yeah, but that's why it's so good to do them, and I just kept doing them over and over and over again, because then when I took the bar, I was like, I walked out and I was like, what was wrong? I was like, just like, went through them, and they were like, no, that's it. It's because you're used to this. So I hesitated saying to that, so I'm not saying, like, whoa, like, throw it off, man. You still gotta dig in deep, but what I'm saying is, the reason I'm telling you is that you don't get too upset with yourself. And then, because a lot of times it's psychological, where you psych yourself out and you think, well, I failed every barbary, how could I possibly pass the bar? But they say often that if you get this grade on the bar, like on barbary, then that's equivalent to passing the bar. Like, even, because it's so much harder.
But it's so time consuming and
But
time
right,
is against us.
but that's, I mean, also just do it under fake, you know, make it that you have more time. Just so you keep doing them. I hate to keep saying that, but. So anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah, these are way harder, and that's good. So, let me, I think there was 7 had something.
You wanna do seven?
On the, I mean,
I thought all the ones in your property were difficult,
they were,
all of them were.
I thought they were, I will agree with you on that. So, I don't know, did anyone, if everyone got 7 right, I don't wanna do it, but I had a rule of perpetuity thing, so I thought it might be, okay. And here Tricia would have got it right, because she picked C. No,
I skipped all.
that's,
You know, my strategy is the same exact what you're talking about. I mean, I looked at it, future interest, I don't know it enough. I mean, we studied it the first semester, but right now I don't know it. And if I don't know it, there's no sense in me trying to figure it out.
oh, you
So
say,
I'm
so you got it right by accident?
No, I didn't. I mean, I wouldn't do that in a test, I would just pick one, right?
Which would have been, I joked because your letter was C that you said you would pick
And that
up
was
a bar. And that was it.
Yeah.
Okay, so, so this is the land order, let me just refresh my memory here. Okay, this is going to do, because it, because it has the rule, okay. And this is a confusing one because it also talks about that some jurisdictions might do this way, some jurisdictions might do that way. Okay. So again, getting back to that kind of fundamental thing, like why do we have the rule of perpetuities, is because we don't want it kind of like hanging out there in terms of like, you know, that we don't know when it's ever gonna be assigned to somebody. Like, the, you know, the right to be assigned can be exercised, whatever. So anyway, so, when the landlord learned what happened, he filed suit.
I have a question on this.
Okay, all right, I got it, go ahead.
So at the very end of this question, it talks about how, you know, any conveyance that isn't recorded is not gonna be valid. If it doesn't specifically say that, because I found that there's a lot of questions in real property where there's a lot of conveyances going on and it's either recorded or it's not recorded.
Right.
What's the general rule for what that effect has, recording it or not recording it? Does it, in order to be a valid conveyance, does it have to be recorded? Like you see in the fact pattern that there isn't this language at the bottom, but there's somewhere in the fact pattern that says, you know, one of the conveyances that it wasn't properly recorded. Is that null and void the entire conveyance?
It should.
It should.
And there, I know there were 1 or 2 other questions where, and we had one like this last time where it wasn't properly recorded, and that kind of screwed up the whole thing then. Or where it was just
There's always so many things going on, you know?
it was just kind of talked about, but it wasn't brought to the, you know, it wasn't brought to have it properly recorded. So I guess my point is, they're not telling you this just for fun. They're saying, any, other than release from it, is not valid against such person for value without notice, whose conveyance is first recorded. So that's kind of critical in the whole process. So I think, let me try to find that one too, that has the.
There was one that he had the deed, did not record it, and he even tore it up. I can't remember the question.
Yeah, I remember that question too.
Yeah, he tore it
I
up.
feel like there were a lot of questions that say
Yeah.
that the deed
Right,
was not
like-
properly recorded, but there were also 3 other conveyances going on where it was properly recorded
Right,
Yeah.
right.
in the same question, so.
Right. So, so do you see here how, this covenant is non-enforceable because it's kind of, it can go on forever? We don't know when this is gonna be assigned, or.
I forget my rule for covenants. Doesn't it typically run with the land? You have to
Yes,
look at the
I think so.
burden and the, God, I forget
Right.
everything from the final.
I think it's, wait, easements?
Easements, covenants, and then equitable
Yeah.
servitudes.
The key here was that there was, and I think it points it out in the answer actually, that there was no limit on the landowner's right of first refusal because it ran to his heirs and assigns. So that's why it's subject to the rule. In other words, it could just keep going on. And that's kind of the fundamental thing that the rule of perpetuities is against. So this covenant can never be enforced. We never know kind of when it's going to end. And that's the problem. I know this was super hard.
Well, it sounds like it's, okay, so initially it was assigned the right of first refusal. And then later down the line, they recorded it, not adding that language in there. So,
Right, and so that right of first refusal can happen at any time. We don't know when it's gonna happen. It could happen now, it could happen more than 24 years from now. And that's why it can't work.
The right of first refusal with this covenant is when the neighbor is going to sell it, correct?
Right,
When the neighbor then eventually decides to sell it somewhere down the line,
and, right,
and we don't know when
and,
that's gonna
and,
be.
and, yeah, and that's, right.
but they gave it to a friend as a gift. So that's what threw me off, the gift thing. I don't know why.
Well, but at the time of the act that, at the time of purchasing it, the person has to have record of this interest from the past. And here, they didn't have that. Because the deed to the neighbor was recorded, the buyer had record notice of the right of first refusal because it was in your chain of title. Had the covenant been within the perpetuity period, the buyer would not have been protected by the Recording Act.
So the correct, here, So it's saying that the covenant wasn't enforceable. That's the correct answer then.
Right, and
I don't understand why the covenant is subject to the rule against perpetuities, that's what I'm having trouble understanding, because I thought that if the point is the rule against perpetuities is in place so the land always goes somewhere.
right. Well, here's the key in the right in the middle of the paragraph, it says the buyer knew nothing about the first, right of first refusal because she inspected only the friend's deed from the neighbor. So because of that lack of knowledge, just think about that for a second.
So that's a reason outside of the rule against perpetuities reason?
Right.
The covenant not being enforceable is like the main gist of it.
Right, and
Because
that there
it's
was.
talking all about the rule against perpetuities, I don't really understand how a covenant. Because their option to purchase it means it's still gonna go somewhere, so why would the rule of perpetuities even?
And I think here what they're saying is, they're saying, you know, it could be unenforceable by that reason, or by this, you know, by the time limit of the rule of perpetuities, you know, in other words, of reason which is in a time limit of less than 21 years. But I think the main thing that they're saying here is because she wasn't given knowledge of this prior interest, was it she? She.
Yeah.
Wasn't given knowledge of this prior interest, that just made the whole thing, like that was the key there, that just made the whole thing that it's not going to be enforceable, and the covenant and D is wrong because the covenant runs with the land. So did you cover some of this stuff in property yet, or not yet? Because that's what I'm feeling
We
like.
did cover covenants, but this is all like first semester stuff, so it's
So
just.
now it's back. Okay, let's do another one.
Can we do, actually, never mind.
You can't do another one.
Never mind, what's that?
I was gonna say number 10, but I realized why
Oh, you got
I
that.
was wrong, I think. Did everybody else get number 10
In property?
right? Yeah, property was the same one.
Yeah,
You got it right?
I guess.
Oh,
I didn't
yeah,
get it
that's, you know, yeah, we're, I didn't even do it because we haven't had it yet.
I didn't get it right.
Well, it's kind of contracts too, though, and remedies.
That's true.
Yeah,
Yeah, I should have
they just give back their money.
That was your answer.
Yeah, my institution. If she can get it back, it's a deposit. Liquidated damages.
I didn't get it right.
There's-
Well, actually, no, I don't understand it because
It's a big breach of contract.
they're liquidated damage, but didn't the buyer didn't breach. I mean, the buyer breached, the seller didn't breach.
The buyer breach, you said?
Yeah,
Yeah, the buyer, so it's $4,000 in earnest money is treated as liquidated damages.
yeah, but then it only says if the seller commits a material breach of this contract, in the language of the.
He's doing so. No, he didn't want, he said he'd rather have a ranch style house instead of the,
So check out, I'm sorry, was there one that you were going over, or
We were talking about 10 really quick.
10? Do you wanna look at 10?
Yeah.
Okay,
you know, it's a two-story home.
okay, let me mark, because I found this other one with the rule of perpetuities, and I want on 17, so 10 in the first set. You didn't think it would be this much fun, right?
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, so much fun.
Okay. Trying to help you, okay. The one with the cellar for your house?
Yeah.
Okay. And so what did you think, or, I'm trying to see what your reasoning was, why you picked something else?
Because the language that's indented there,
Uh-huh,
the language of the contract about the liquidated damages, the buyer breached, not the seller. And the seller lost $2,000 on it, so I thought he would get $2,000. I picked C.
okay. Because you thought that,
Because he had to sell it for $198,000 rather than the contracted
so that they
price.
would that they would kind of split it, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
Because
Okay.
he would get restitution for what he lost, because he lost the,
okay, that seems reasonable. What about the rest of you?
I don't know, I stuck with the whole liquidated damages clause. And because the buyer's filing suit to get the refund, it's like, but how can you get that, because you're the one that breached,
Okay,
so he gets nothing.
I know what I did.
That was my process.
Okay. So you got D?
I got
Okay,
oh, it says could treat as liquidated damages unless,
Right.
unless,
So
I
it says, that's
I
what
get it, I
I
get
was
it, I
going
get it.
over, unless the seller commits a material breach or the buyer dies. So
thought it could only be treated as liquidated damages if one of these conditions happen.
right. This is just,
so long.
there's no kind of straightforward contract rule, real, property rule here. This is just kind of like a contract thing. It's certainly, it feels that way more to me than necessarily a property type of thing.
Yeah.
And so basically, it's that, it really comes down to that, like, it's just, $4,000 represented a reasonable estimate of damages in the event of a breach. And, he wasn't so, the 198 wasn't so outside of, I think the explanation he gave, many courts uphold the retention of earnest money up to 10%. I mean, how would you, there's no way as a student you would know something like that. I think that's kind of going beyond, anyway.
17, so
Oh, this was in, the next set? The landowner on the tract of land?
Yeah.
Okay, then we'll move on. It's already almost, I got that right, it's already almost 2:30. So,
the property will do that to you.
I know. Anyone get this? Correct? So this whole right of first refusal thing, this is kind of what we just saw before, so usually that's not, subject to the rule, you can't usually assign them, right? It's just kind of you. But here, that's exactly what they're doing. And the key here is it's saying, in that indented paragraph there, the block, granted to my brothers, his heirs and assigns. So what should immediately go off in your head besides you wanna go home and have a better meal than what you had today? Like, what should you be thinking? Given that one of the choices is rule against perpetuities.
We could say there's no end to it,
Yeah, if it's going to his heirs and assigns,
pretty much depends on.
right, they, you know, that their right to exercise this first, right of first refusal, we don't know when this is gonna happen. So I know this is hard, but that's kind of what you need to keep thinking of. Those types of little, you know, these little clues like that.
Does it matter that we don't know if he has kids now? Or like living, there's no,
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 because he could have them.
okay.
As long as it's not that it's right, that it's just so far removed, but he's alive now. Right, that person's alive, they could have kids, so it could happen.
So why does it violate the rule against perpetuities then,
Well,
if it could happen?
well, because here it's granted to my brothers, his heirs and assigns. That's like those assigns, who knows when they're gonna do it?
So because it could be in violation of the rule eventually?
Well, no, it violates that right of first refusal violates because he's making it, it's usually not assignable, that right of first refusal, but here he's making it that it is assignable. So because it's going so far into the future, in other words, we don't know when it's gonna happen. Usually when the rule isn't violated, we know that there's a group right now who could take possession of that, who could act upon that, right?
Right.
But here, if it's going all the way out to the assigns, we don't know when that could be way beyond the 21 years. Right, that's kind of several groups away. And that's kind of what I want you to keep thinking of, because that's how a lot of these problems seem to play out when they're looking at the rule of perpetuities. I know, it's frustrating. We're gonna keep, and in fact, because I know you're having trouble with it, next time we meet, I think we're gonna spend some more time on it. Maybe not cartoons, but I'll send you that chart. I think that'll be helpful.
What
so-
helped you? Or did you just innate, I mean, I'm sure it was hard.
Yeah, we didn't have cartoons, because there was no internet.
No, I'm saying, what helped you understand it?
I think just, and that's what I'm trying to, you know, I'm not trying to like, not explain it all, but just like little tricks like that when I saw things, like it was like, and then it's going to the assigns, it's like, well, who knows when that's just too far away. It's not like to his sons, but to his heirs and assigns, it's just, it's too far. So that's how I kept trying to think of it, that it's too far removed. And that gave me pause. But, I mean, and I'm not telling you not to understand this, but don't make yourself nuts over this. Because remember, at most there's like, you know, 2 or 3, it's not like your whole exam is gonna be the rule of perpetuities, right? So again, you have to kind of do that balancing where if it's just that one thing, like let it go.
Yeah.
Because you have so many other, you know, if you're really good at other stuff, spend your time on that. And I'm not telling you not to understand it, but there's not gonna be, you know, 15 questions on the rule of perpetuities. Okay, so there's not, and I'm not telling you not to understand it, and obviously you can't do that with everything, like, oh, well, I don't understand, I'm gonna let that, you know, maybe like one thing, like the rule of perpetuities and then some other weird evidence question or something like that, but you can have 1 or 2 things that just you're having trouble with and you know, I need to move on to something else. Because you don't want it to so bog you down that, so you get that one question right, but at the expense of not studying all the other stuff. So, so let's try to squeeze in at least 2 Civ Pro and evidence questions, or maybe I'll be less ambitious. Let's say 1 Civ Pro and evidence question, and we'll see how we do. Was there one glaring one that jumps out at you?
Going back to what you were just saying about the rule against perpetuities, I think, and I don't wanna speak on behalf of everybody, so everybody can voice their opinion on this, but I think we learn by repetition, so
Yes,
it's important to go over and gloss over the stuff that we did last semester, because I forget most of it, to be honest with you. And I think it'd be very useful to go over stuff like fee estates, landlord tenant stuff,
Yes.
you know, to do like substantive kind of reviews on that with you.
okay,
I think that would be like one of the best things we could do, honestly.
okay, so you'd rather go over, so rather than maybe just going over the exam, you'd rather maybe go, or maybe we could spend an hour going over some questions on the exam, and then are there certain like topics you want to spend? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm, like
Like
this
if
is for
we were
you.
gonna do, if we were gonna do fee estates, you know, like what there's, fee simple, there's life estates and writing it out, the conveyances and stuff and crossing things out, like, we've done all this stuff, but I think it's important to reinforce it. You know, like that's how I learned for the baby bar, you know, just doing it over and over and over again.
I'm glad you're
until
saying it, that's
it
my,
gets
right,
like a steel trap, you know?
right,
And not that we have to learn, and not that we have to get it up there in a steel trap right this second, but the more times we have exposure to it now, the more it'll help us when we're preparing for the bar.
right, and, okay, so how about this? Do you want, I mean, we could do it now, but do you want to email me, like, I want to go over these two topics, or I want to really focus on this? And then I can be prepared to talk
You
about
guys
it.
wanna get like we can get like a group email going, and everybody can kind of put
Yeah.
their opinions on it.
Do that.
Do you guys wanna do this? I'm just
I
like
think it's a
voicing
great
my
idea.
opinion.
No,
I think it's great.
it'll help to go over.
Yeah, and we could spend, you know, we could do a half hour on one topic and a half hour on another topic, and then each week, you know, I mean, my sense is you're all gonna have a different topic, you know what I mean, like,
Yeah.
this one, and that's okay, so, you know, like, one week we'll do this for a half hour, next week, and by the time we're done, we'll have covered everything. And remember, there's still, you know, next year we could meet again and so forth, so, I think that's a great idea, like I said, I wanna do what helps you,
Almost like a
so,
bar, almost like a bar review course, because,
yeah,
you know, truthfully, like, I didn't do, for the first time, I didn't do a lot of these because, say, for real property, none of what we have learned so far in our, real property class is on this, which is fine, that's fine.
right.
But so what the future interest, I know I don't understand, so I'm gonna go home, not right now, or maybe
Right.
later, but I'll read the answer and why, and I have to really delve into it.
Right, and, but that's a good point, it's like, so what's the point if I guess and get it right, I'm not
Right.
getting anything
Because
out of it.
I know that I don't know it.
It's better for you to spend your time looking at an evidence or civ pro question
Yeah.
that you could kind of really sink your teeth into,
Yeah.
even
That's
if you-
honestly, it's, since we started, last year, you know, first year, something I've always kind of wanted to do is like more of a substantive review on the weekends of what we had just learned the previous week or
Yeah.
whatever, you know, like to reinforce it instead of doing, it's important to learn how to write and do multi-states,
Right.
it definitely is, but I think
I'm
most
with you.
people learn by
I'm
reinforcement,
with
so the more times you're exposed to it and the more times you talk about it, the better you learn it.
I'm with you, so I was tasked with doing this, but I know when that's what we would do, that we would come out of torts or whatever, and then we would lock ourselves in this glass room, and there was like 5 of us, and we would just sit and just go over it again and again and again and again and again. And it was me and 4 guys that were 25 years older than me. It's hysterical. But they were the kindest guys, and so that's, I'm all for that. So obviously we can't do it
Yeah.
after your class, cause I'm asleep, because I'm old. But
on
but-
the weekends, on Saturdays, I think.
So how about this then? So we could do one of 75 things. We could. There you go. This is what lawyers do. So you could, after your classes each week, you can say, on Saturday, could we go over these points? Because this is what we learned, and I want to go over that. I want to, even if you understood it, I want to review that again. In any of the subjects, except brain surgery. I don't know anything about that. Or you could just have a topic in your head that I want to go over that from last year or whatever. So whatever you want to throw out to me, and you don't have to tell me what it
No,
is
it's
or whatever.
easier to go by what we were just like, Daniel says, what we went, because we go through these class things so fast
Right.
that it's hard to
What?
grasp it right away.
Do you take notes in when they're, you do?
Yeah,
Okay.
but
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
just so, and then it's next,
Yeah,
so it's
it's
like,
like
wait a
you're
minute, you know, what happened?
Yeah, then you're on to the next week.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but that would help me the most to help you, is that, so you would tell me, you know, these are the things we reviewed, I wanna go over it again. And then, and I'm not saying I'm gonna do it better than them, but it's just hearing it again, and maybe, and sometimes it's not about, you know, who, it's just, I know sometimes just hearing it from a different voice, you know, having someone, and that's why when I would do the study groups, like hearing my classmates say it or something like that, it's like, all of a sudden I'd be like, the professor was saying that for 7 weeks, and I had no idea, and then he just said, and it's like totally understood it. And maybe it really wasn't that my friend said it, but it was just, the light bulb finally went off that we told some more
Right,
stories. So,
because they might have some piece of advice or some way they looked at it, and
Right,
all of a sudden will strike.
and it
a light
resonated,
bulb.
and it's also just, like you say, it's just that repetition, so at that point, my brain opened up and I understood it that way,
Right.
I
right?
would love to go, like in evidence, for example, we're gonna be in like the confrontation clause area for the next 3 weeks, you said?
Yeah.
Because
I think so,
it's so, I guess, difficult to kind of grasp, you know, what are the 2 factors you need? They have to be unavailable and you have to have had a chance to cross-examine them.
Right.
That's like what we're going over now, but we're gonna be going over that for the next few weeks, so like, I think it would be beneficial to go over stuff like that we learned last semester, like character evidence and impeachment and stuff
Yeah.
like that, you know what I mean, like stuff that I just forget.
Okay, okay,
And it kind of ties it all together though.
It does.
Yeah.
okay, so I don't mean to give you more work, but the easiest thing for you to give me more work is,
I'm
is
starting
that-
the thread right
is,
He's starting.
is, you know, and then, so, right, if you wanna start the email, and then if you guys wanna join in and say, this is what I wanna go over, and then we can have an off the record conversation when we're done.
Yeah, and I think the best thing to do from going forward also, if we review it and then quickly apply it, maybe if someone has a specific MBE question or essay question that we've gone down in the past and just apply it, I think that would help to revise it so much.
And that's why it would help me if you tell me what you wanna go over, so then I can maybe search for some questions, even if they're not from, because I often don't get
Yeah.
these until Friday night. So even if I might then look for some prior questions, or we may have to just kind of follow through it and find some things, but I think just going over it and even if we're doing other questions, I think those, we're gonna keep talking about it.
Yeah.
And I think that'll be helpful for all of you. Okay, so let's try to just get one in, one of each of them in, and we'll see what we do. Was there any in Civ Pro or evidence that you wanna, that stand out to you? Guaranteed someone's dead in some of them. They love, and even property, they kill people.
That would be a good idea.
In Civ Pro, there were so many jurisdiction questions, oh my
Yeah,
god,
there was.
there were so many,
There's a lot.
and I totally forget about it, exactly.
Which is not, that's
What?
not
Can
good,
you go
that we
number
forget.
So you forget in that you've covered that already.
Well, I
Yeah, we
crammed
did
for the
person-
test.
Five?
I crammed for the test.
Yeah.
Then it goes away.
Five.
That one just threw me off.
The plaintiff,
It's
says to citizen A,
the interpreter.
the restaurant,
Involving the immigrant. Number 5, set 3.
For Civ Pro?
For Civ Pro.
Oh, I'm sorry, I meant evidence.
Evidence.
Oh,
Evidence?
You want evidence?
okay. And so I was on Civ Pro.
Civ
Set 3, the first one, number 5. But
The
the
key
immigrant,
witness in the prosecution case.
and the interpreter.
Except for the tally record one,
The key witness in the prosecution's
Oh,
case.
okay.
Set 3, number 5.
the test prep course,
It says the key witness.
Set number 5. Set 3.
oh, 5, I'm sorry, but I was thinking you said 3, okay, all right.
Good quiz, nah.
Gotta practice my numbers when I go home. Okay. opinion was in the prosecution's case, okay, give me a second to refresh my recollection. Okay, what, help me, what,
Just takes them out to make a true translation. But why is that more so than?
so this is,
What'd you pick?
I don't wanna say this
Well,
is fun for me, but this is fun for me. So why did you, cause these are ones that I'm just like,
I don't see.
I like property where I have to keep going through.
I picked C two, but I can see
Yeah.
why I got it wrong. I think it's because she's the only person in the county that can do it, and it's a method that's different
Right,
from what they use, and she would be an expert, but she's the only expert that can.
But this is the answer B.
right, she
Oh, no,
takes,
it's not the answer D.
The answer's.
The answer is B as in boy.
B as in boy.
What am I looking at? I'm sorry, yes, B as in boy, she makes it oath to make a true translation.
so
I mean,
So here's the thing, so I'm, in some ways, I'm reluctant to spend a ton of time on this, 'cause I think this is really unique, but they may have it, so a quick kind of crash course on translators, right? So they're supposed to be, that, right, they're just literally saying what you said,
okay.
right? And not putting a spin on it or anything, even if you say something bizarro, like I was walking down the street and a mule came and ate a sandwich, if you say that, then that's what the translator says. They don't look at the attorney and say, they just say exactly what they said, even if it's nonsensical. And so they are supposed to take an oath that they completely do that they are unbiased, that they don't follow one, and so normally you wouldn't want, you normally wouldn't want that, but that's their job, is not to, favor one side or the other. Like I've had it sometimes where, and this was like in small claims court, where it's like, I had someone who didn't, speak English, and it was just like a family member there. So normally the judge wouldn't want that person because, right, they're gonna like maybe reinterpret some things. But it was just like a quick little thing, and the judge is like, fine, let her do it, and they put her under oath, and she said, I'm just gonna say what she says. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what they gave of the answer here. An interpreter must meet the qualifications, and also an interpreter must take an oath. So, and the other thing is with someone who is deaf, they, and it's interesting, they said, just, this is a quick, total hearing impairment. Usually, my stepson is deaf, and so they don't like being called hearing impairment, because that sounds like you're impaired, so that's interesting that they say it like that. They just like either deaf or hard of hearing. So hard of hearing would be someone who, like, you could talk, but you just have to talk really loud, and they have maybe a hearing aid or something like that. It's interesting that they put it like that. But in any event, you have to let them testify, and you have to, you have to have it that they're treated like everybody else, and you can't shut them down just because we can't find someone. So that's a good question. So go ahead, and give me another one more on evidence. On a quick side story, I did do, I represented my stepson in something, and they had it where he couldn't see the interpreter. And then I objected to it, and it was a benefits matter. And so we won because I argued that they never let him see his interpreter. And then they kind of forced him to just read people's lips. And so it's like they're, they know that's a big thing, and have to let people, be able to see, their interpreter and all that. Anyway, got it Ellen right, or? I like that one, that was interesting, I don't think I've ever seen that one.
Number 17 on set 3 doesn't look very familiar.
Okay.
Looks more like a Civ Pro question.
I was
Oh, yeah.
I was
That's what I
looking
said,
at
I said I was right, Civ Pro.
Yeah, I was looking at that one too, the rear end, rear end.
Yeah. What one is,
17 for set 3 in evidence.
set 3:17, evidence. Plaintiff who's a citizen of state A? Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's actually a really nice place to go, state A. Beautiful, they have really nice mountains there. Yeah, but state B, they have really good, they have lava, good lava there. And citizen. A. So what, talk to me, what did you, so I mean, unlike property, this is like, and I'm not saying this in a disrespectful way to you, this is just part of experience and getting to know the law more, this is really straightforward. Like, this is just, like, that's what it is, there's no like, well, go ahead, tell me what you were thinking, all of you, when you were looking at this, what was going through your head and what did you pick and what did you struggle with? I mean, okay.
I thought it was a Civ Pro question at first.
Yeah, I did too.
And so I was confused because I
don't think we've done,
don't think we've done anything.
because we started in evidence with rule 401 for the federal rules, which is relevancy. So we did like 401 and 403, which would be like logical and legal relevance, and then we kind of went on from there. So we never
Okay.
talked about the Erie Doctrine in evidence.
Okay,
We did talk about it in Civ Pro though.
okay.
Yeah, it's how they approach this, it's a pro. Evidence is not even my mind.
But presumptions, I don't think we talked about, or I don't know if we will talk about, but.
Yeah, I don't think we did either.
Yeah, Yeah, but I think so in terms of like process of elimination, so to know, I'm trying to think of the quickest way to explain this, that, so you know why it's in that state, right? Do you get why they're having it in,
Federal.
suit filed for court in state A? Do you know why we're filing in state A? Let's go backwards.
That's where the accident happened.
That's where the action happened. Where could you file an action? How do you know where to file an action?
What?
How do you know what state to file an action? I'm in a car accident. Where do I file it?
Personal jurisdiction, so where that's occurred in the state, or what state it occurred in,
And where else, or where else is my choice?
district.
Where the defendant lives.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Where the action happened, where the defendant lives. Where the action happened, where the defendant lives. So, right, I'm in an action in California, the driver's from Arizona, I could file it there, but could you see why I probably wouldn't want to file it there? Why?
Go out there.
I gotta schlep out there, right? I don't wanna go there, I don't know anything, they don't have good food, right? So, and you know, it's more likely, so more of the witnesses are here, right? The doctors are here, so that makes sense. But, and then we have diversity jurisdiction because we're more than $75,000. That's why we're in federal court. So, so because we're in the state that I'm allowed to file it in, right, the federal court has to follow that state's laws, right? Because there's no like federal driving law. I mean, but you know what I mean in terms of rules of the road, right? That's state. So to know that when you have diversity jurisdiction, the federal court has to, but they have to follow, they use the state laws that the case is operating in. And so you can eliminate C because a diversity case says the court applies substantive and procedural laws of the state in which it's in. That's not true. They don't do the procedural laws, right? So you can immediately eliminate that. And federal law doesn't recognize presumption. Well, they don't have any, you know, rear end laws, you know, federal laws. And B doesn't recognize, who cares what B thinks? We're not in B, right?
Yeah.
So here it's like, you could kind of just eliminate things even if you didn't necessarily completely understand. And you know what prima facie means, right? It's a window cleaner, no, what is it? What does it mean?
It's like a case in chief.
Tim Glenn, I thought you'd be looking at me like, what's she talking about?
I know it's probably the negligence.
Like on its face, right? In prima facie case, it's on, right? That on its face, you know, these are the, you know, that it's obvious this is going to be, you know, often you see these, well, you see it in criminal, but often also like in employment law cases, like, you know, you have prima facie evidence that so-and-so was discriminated against because we have their employment record that says, we denied hire this person because they're a person of color. Prima facie evidence that they were discriminated against, as opposed to other evidence that may just be, well, someone made it, you know, someone talked about that they didn't like her shoes. Well, you know, so it's like I have direct evidence, basically. Okay, another one. You want to go to Civ Pro? Or do you have another evidence one?
Finish it, bro. Is that one question at all?
have you talked about prima facie stuff, that word or that term?
It's here and there, it's here and there, it's not like,
Not really. Not really?
It's never really been,
like we use it.
Prima facie, I just think of like elements, you know? Like in a prima facie case of this is what you need, here are the elements you need.
Right, I mean, so like another, so I'm just thinking, you know, so a criminal example would be something like, that there's a videotape of someone screaming, I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna kill you. So that's, you know, on its face, that's evidence that you may have killed this person. So,
it never has been explained.
okay, put that on the list, let's go over that. No, really,
Alright,
I need to explore that more, I'm trying to just give you kind of quick examples, but we need to explain that more, I can see it on your faces. So, any SIP pro?
yeah, definitely.
Even though the other one did seem like some SIP pro,
Yeah,
everybody.
It's like a crossover, huh?
Crossover, like country and pop music.
I feel like it's a vendors that should already know.
I even got question number 1 wrong.
Me too.
The foreign correspondent?
Yeah, because I thought a foreign person, if they could be, if they could like foresee being hailed into court, you know, then they could get sued in federal court.
No citizen of any state is not here.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really kind of sneaky, you know, that's such a minutia question. Just that they're not, you know, because you can't have diversity jurisdiction if they're not a citizen of a state. So that's kind of what that completely rests on.
There have been cases in Civ Pro that we've read where a foreign defendant does get brought into federal court from out of the country.
Right, that's okay, but why is this different?
Because he's visiting?
Oh, because he resided here before, is that right? He,
He's been dropped.
he's a US citizen.
Right,
This is a drive-by
what's the word I'm looking for?
service of process.
It's a drive-by?
So the key here is the plaintiff sued the reporter for libel in federal court. So that should give you, he resided in state A. He wrote that the plaintiff is citizen of state B. So because they're telling you that, they're kind of putting it, what is it, right. So that it would be diversity of jurisdiction. That's kind of what they're getting at. That's different than what you talked about, right? You could totally be sued if you're not a citizen here. It just won't be based on that you came to federal. In other words, this wouldn't just normally be in state court. It wouldn't be based. You can't bring it to federal court because there's no diversity of jurisdiction. It's not a diversity question. Diversity, right? So parties from different states, amount in controversy, $75,000 or more. You meet the monetary threshold, but you don't meet the state diversity threshold because he's of nothing. That's the difference. You could totally sue someone, you know, that they get into a car accident with you and they're from, you know, whatever, Great Britain. You could totally sue them, just not in federal court based on diversity.
So it would have to
Sue
be
them in
state
state
court?
court. Right.
So, and it would have to be, if he's in England, he lives in England and he crashes into your car in Delaware.
It would
It
be,
has to be in Delaware State Court.
it would be, right, that's where the action took
Oh,
place.
okay.
Right. Right, and if he was, I think that the question was if he was an alien, normally then you'd be I hate that word, but you'd be an alien of, a particular state. Right, you would be, domicile or whatever. Okay, give me another one. This is it.
Family law is like state law, right?
What question are you on? Yep.
Yeah, it's a stupid mistake, yeah.
No, there's no stupid
I
mistakes.
was looking number 8.
Question 8?
Yeah.
Let's take a look, no, I'm sure you had it, other people got it, or you got it because, by accident. So, woman's husband abandoned her home in state A. Oh, the husband, I was like, what? Right, the
Over
husband moves
domestic
to lack of
relations.
justice. What's that?
I didn't know that actually.
I know what that meant,
Yeah.
It's diverse in jurisdiction and they meet the amount of controversy because it's a domestic relation or probate proceedings. The federal court won't exercise jurisdiction over it.
Yeah, and you may I think we talked about this when we were kind of doing writing and stuff like that. Things like family law are just pretty exclusively a state type of matter, custody, things like that. Unless it becomes some type of constitutional issue, like you wouldn't let me have the kids because of some, but this is purely about a divorce matter. It's not a federal court matter. Unless there was some like tax issue that got involved in it, that part may be in federal court. But no, that's a good one. I think it says, right, will not exercise probate proceedings, right, state matters, that type of thing. Okay. All right. Everyone's depending on you, Daniel. No, but really, don't put it all on him. If you guys,
No, I'm gonna put out what I think.
if you guys
we
have
should
stuff,
start with, but I want everybody to
you should.
chime in, you know?
Yeah,
there's a
but that's what I'm
topic on
saying.
there.
It shouldn't be that you're spending all the time doing it.
I feel like I wanna go over everything we've learned so far eventually, so I'm up to whatever you guys feel like you're struggling with the most or
I
whatever.
was gonna have you start with chapter 1.
Well, that's what I'm gonna put.
Page 1.
For Civ Pro, for example, I'm putting personal jurisdiction and subject matter jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Like you should start there, that'll be a good.
So basically, you just want me to reteach. Yes.
In an hour. An hour.
An hour. Oh, yeah.
Then 5 years from now, you'll start your own bar. Your own
You
course.
see, you can start your own problem.
But this was really, me hearing stuff like that is really helpful because, every group is different and I find I have to, I want to work with what works for you. I've had some students that like, I just want to do this, like that's gonna help me. So I'm glad that you spoke up and, so that we can.
We could be
So-
your test subjects and you can review with this, and then after us, then you can start your own review
Right.
class. And
You know what they have, CJ, on Lexis, they have, yeah, I'm sure you probably have your own like outline and stuff like that, but they have the Barbary outlines for free on the Lexis subscriptions.
Right.
So
I forgot about that.
they do. And I think I sent them all to you guys.
Oh, you probably did.
Yeah,